Hi guys, this is the Sony A7C, which was released in September of 2020, which begs the question, with all the fancy new cameras that are out there today, is the A7C still a compelling value? Yeah, it is. So I think the A7C is without question one of the most versatile and useful cameras on the market today. You got that big full frame sensor that the A7 III made popular. People raved about the photo capabilities of the A7 III. This thing can take the exact same quality of photos as it has the same sensor and processor as the A7 III, but it has the flip out screen, which is helpful for you content creators. Well, people like me, content creators, important people. Flip out 360-degree articulation, fantastic. You can use this in so many different ways. It has IBIS, which is not that great. We'll get into that in a second, but it also records the gyroscopic data, so you can go do some vlogging. We'll do some vlogging in a second, but let's keep talking about how awesome this camera is right here with this nice tree in the background. It is just a solid camera, small and light, but feels really good. You can use fancy, expensive lenses like I have here, the 24mm G Master 1.4, but you can also use things like the Sigma 16mm 1.4, an APS-C lens. The camera will just go into APS-C crop mode and you will still get fantastic 4K quality in video. I wouldn't do it in photos because you lose too many megapixels, but in video, it's a great option. Amazing Sony autofocus. Right now there's a box around my left eye and it is not going anywhere. It latches onto you, will not lose you. One of the best features of this and a lot of the newer Sony cameras is that fantastic autofocus. There's also unlimited recording and there's no overheating issues on this guy. But you know what? Now that I talk about the vlogging, I have the itch. Let's go out to the park, do a little vlogging. You know what, that vlog itch can wait for a second because I want to show you guys the A7C as a studio camera. Plus, there's a few things I forgot to mention out there because it was cold and my brain froze. So here it is in the studio. Obviously, this thing can be a fantastic camera for you in the studio. The A7 III and the A7C built many a person's online content creation career with that fantastic sensor and the capabilities. Right now I am using the Cine 2 profile with the Paul Leeming corrective LUT, and honestly this looks as good as my A7 IV S-Log3 10-bit footage that I use the Paul Leeming corrective LUT on. It's basically identical because I don't do a ton of color grading in here. I don't have a huge amount of dynamic range. I don't need to push things around, so in all honesty, I don't really need the 10-bit in here. I like to have it. I like to have stuff just in case I need it. And I do other serious video work where sometimes I do want to color grade heavily. So I do like having the 10-bit footage, but for a lot of online things, you do not need 10-bit. I've actually been really impressed with what I get out of the Sony 8-bit cameras. The ZV-E10, my A7 III for years, this A7C. A lot of times the 8-bit footage is all you need. It has 120 frames per second slow motion. It is in 1080, but again, for years, I used 120 frames per second in 1080, and I had no real complaints. By the time you put it on your 4K timeline, it gets upscaled and then compressed out to YouTube. It actually is quite usable. Check it out. Here is me just looking gorgeous here, taking off my winter hat foolishly because it is freezing outside. The things I do for YouTube ad revenue, am I right? It is amazing in low light. You're hard-pressed to find a better camera in low light than the A7C. This is an extreme test I did. I went out to my backyard, I just turned off all the lights, and check out the iPhone 13 footage. Just looks like nothing. You can't see anything, really. And the FX30, which is pretty good for an APS-C camera, that it just doesn't hold a candle to the A7C. The thing can basically see in the dark. If you want a camera that does better in low light than the A7C, you're going to have to get the A7S III or the FX3. It's got a 2.36 million dot EVF. I mentioned that because a lot of cameras coming out these days don't actually have an EVF, and it's always nice to have an EVF. If it's a bright sunny day, especially with photos, you want to line up your shot, or in video too. You know, that EVF that can really save your bacon. And it's also a very capable photo camera, 10 frames per second in mechanical shutter. It takes wonderful photos with great dynamic range, and you can take time lapses. It's an excellent photo camera, but people think of this as video first. I understand why, but it is an excellent photo camera. And don't forget, with its size, weight, and form factor, it is a wonderful gimbal camera. I can't think of a better gimbal camera than this rangefinder type A7C. It is just, you can get smaller lenses, put it on the A7C. You can put it on even smaller gimbals like the Zhiyun Crane M3, which is my favorite gimbal. The A7C and the smaller lenses fit on that just fantastically. It is a great gimbal camera. And now let's go out to the park and show you the vlog stuff that I promised earlier. The A7C, in my opinion, is one of the best, if not the best, travel camera that you can buy. You can do so many things with it. The full frame for the photos, the small compact size. You get yourself a little pancake lens or one of those small new Sony 2.8 lenses. Just take that around. Ease of carry. You know what? You're not going to break your back carrying that thing around. And this thing actually has 5-axis in-body image stabilization. And it's not the greatest when it comes to video. In photos, it's going to help you a lot. But here, I'll just walk nice and carefully because this is also an excellent vlogging camera. But as you can see, the stabilization is not wonderful if you're using the camera's IBIS. However, the A7C has a trick up its sleeve. Let's look at it. Now, anyone who's seen my channel before already knows this trick. Plus, I believe I mentioned it earlier in the video. I have recorded these clips out of sequence, but this is the Catalyst Browse. I have run my file through the Catalyst Browse software. It's free from Sony. There's also an upgraded version, the Catalyst Prepare, but really I find Catalyst Browse is all I need. See, the camera records the gyroscopic data, then they use that data with the Catalyst Browse to give you this gimbal-like footage without a gimbal. It is something I use all the time on my little ZV-E10, my A7 IV, FX30, all of the new Sony cameras, but a lot of people don't realize the A7C also records the gyroscopic data. And look at this. It's like I'm floating on a cloud. Gorgeous. Okay, so I'm in the car of shame here to talk about what I don't like about the A7C. Number one card slot. So if you're trying to do professional work, professional videography, professional photography, I don't think you can take this camera because you really want that backup recording. Boy, that is a loud car. You want that backup recording, you know, in case you're trying to film someone's special day. Their baby is getting married at the zoo. It's a special day, and then you get a corrupt SD card. Forget about it. You lose that footage, no good. So I think that in a high stakes environment, you're going to have to go with a different camera. So the A7 III is, of course, a good option in terms of photos and video if you're behind the camera. But a lot of us need this flippy screen, which is one of the great benefits of the A7C. Another thing I don't like about it is actually the screen. I like the fact that it flips out, but the screen is only okay. Most cameras have better screens than the A7C. It is usable. It's better than something like my Sony ZV-E10, but it could stand to be improved. The lack of 10-bit color. I like to use S-Log3 a lot on my Sony cameras, but I don't like to use it on the A7C very much because when you go to color grade your footage, it usually falls apart. So it would be nice if it had the 10-bit, but there's a lot of people out there who won't be using those log profiles, and in that case, this camera is for you. And I've already mentioned it before, but the IBIS is not very good. So if you think you can just grab this camera and use it like an action cam, you are sorely mistaken. The IBIS is not even really okay. It is barely there. When it comes to vlogging, I would like to use the Catalyst Browse if I'm moving with the camera. But that's it for the negative ninny talk. Let's go back to the studio. So now the A7 IV is obviously out, and if you have the budget, I think that is the best bang for buck hybrid camera that you can possibly get in the Sony lineup. However, it is $2,500. And the A7C I have seen selling for $1,600 new recently. $1,600, did you hear my voice go up? Because I was excited. And used, you might even get it for less. So for $1,600 or less, you are getting a hell of a camera right there. You could start your online career. You could turn into the next me. Oh, wouldn't that be good? No, you'd be sad.
you'd be a very sad person. Maybe not sad, but ridiculous. You too could be a ridiculous person making videos on YouTube about cameras and going out, making your neighbors think you're crazy. Anyway, thanks for watching this. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.